All right, we are good to go. We are live on YouTube, which means we are streaming over the World Wide Web. Thank you all for being here tonight for our parent orientation for the Phase 1.2 reopening of Ashburton Elementary's building. So I'm going to be very careful about the language here because instruction has always been there, but we are actually reopening the physical space to provide some of that instruction in. You're going to primarily hear from me tonight, but we're going to have some of the other members of the team join us. I do want to let you know that we are recording this meeting. As I said, it is live on YouTube. I'm going to ask that all participants do remain on mute throughout. I'll talk through the questions. Can I get a thumbs up from any of the Ashburton staff if you can see the presentation on the screen? Awesome. All right, so we're welcoming you here to the Phase 1.2 family orientation. I do want to share that when we gave the Phase 1.1 family orientation, we had never opened a school in a pandemic before. Since then, we have actually done that. So we've worked it all out. Your students are going to have a smooth entrance into and out of the building. And if any of you are repeat families, meaning you have students in Phase 1.1 as well, I might be able to cut down on my daily update emails to those families, tweaking the arrival, tweaking the dismissal, and providing updated information that we learned along the way. So I want to first off say welcome to all of you. Tonight we're going to talk about a lot about health and safety guidelines and protocols. We're going to talk about arrival and dismissal, making sure that your students get into the building quickly and safely so that we can maximize that learning. We're going to talk about the general school schedule. I'll talk about specifics coming to you from your child's teacher and what that will look like over the next 2 weeks. Because again, it is 2 weeks, a little bit more than 2 weeks before our Phase 1.2 Week A students do set foot on campus. We'll talk about some of the classrooms, hallways, breakfast, lunch, and bathroom. I am aware that the CDC has recently released guidance that dropped some things from 6 feet to 3 feet. MCPS has not adopted those yet, so we're still using those 6 feet markers, and we'll talk about that tonight. If and when that changes, obviously, we would update you. We're going to talk about that recess and wellness break, how we're aligning the schedules as MCPS has asked us to do with the virtual schedule. We're going to talk about technology and materials. Hopefully we've cut down some weight in some of the classrooms and your students aren't going to have to carry back quite as much. You all will also be getting some information that has not been shared with the general parent population about some new sign-in, sign-out procedures, as well as the Chromebook cases that are going to be assigned to every student who comes for in-person instruction. We're going to hear from Ms. Strauss about social emotional support as we make this transition. And then we're going to talk about just some tips and hints for starting successfully. Obviously, the tips and hints that we provide to grade 4 and 5 families are very different than we provide to the kindergarten families. So with that, this meeting is being recorded. The meeting recording, presentation, and some other information will be shared with all of you tomorrow. So look for that in your email. You'll also be getting regular communications from us along the way over the next 2 weeks as we prepare to welcome your families back into the building. I do want to say a huge thank you to a lot of the people that are on this call tonight and who weren't able to join us. Ms. Reese and Ms. Locke have been absolutely phenomenal partners in figuring out how to open up the largest elementary school in MCPS in the midst of a pandemic with new guidelines around spacing of students, room occupancy, contact tracing. This is new to all of us. And I say that I'm surrounded by a phenomenal team. That includes Ms. Strauss, Ms. Gillespie, Ms. Elleraj, Ms. Rubin, all of the core team, obviously our office team, Ms. Jacobs, all of you know her and love her. She has had more paperwork and more spreadsheets thrown at her than I think the entirety of her career combined prior to COVID. And she's handled it all with grace and flexibility. There is a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this reopening and has been for many, many, many months. We didn't just decide in March to reopen. We've been deciding since September to reopen. In fact, our original plan was submitted in July of last year. And then obviously we didn't get to use it. So we've tweaked it since. So I just want to say thank you to everyone here and a huge thank you to our building services staff, who were the ones that behind the scenes since the past summer have been navigating a large scale construction project, preparing our rooms for limited capacity, shifting spaces to make it so that all of our teachers could be in a space that works for teaching students. And then obviously our teachers that are on this call tonight and who aren't here, who have, I think, at least 3 times since last March, reinvented the profession with which they've been a part of. So they've moved it from being fully in person to being fully virtual. to being fully virtual, but in a different way, and now fully virtual or partially virtual with partially in person. So we have a phenomenal staff here at Ashburton. All of you have had the experience working with our amazing staff, and that is going to continue. I will say that the first day of phase 1.1 was very much about operations and procedures and routines. And the second day really was about innovation. And our teachers started moving their rooms around. They started changing the technology. They were really experimenting with how they could make this work for both their virtual learners and the in-person learners. And that will continue in phase 1.2. So throughout the course of the meeting, feel free to use the chat to surface questions. I'm going to make a recommendation, though, that you might wait till the end of the presentation to ask questions, because there's a lot of slides, 60 some slides, and there's a lot of information. And I guarantee you that if you have a question within the first 3 slides, I'm probably going to answer it by the last 57. So hold your questions till the end. I'm going to ask Ms. Rubin, as she did in the last meeting, to tackle those questions and elevate them. Some of you may actually get answers via the chat along the way, just because we've shared the information in the slides, and we can certainly provide that to you. I do again ask that you remain on mute so that we don't get interrupted as we move through this presentation. I do want to always forward this or put this out front. If you decide after hearing what it looks like tonight to change your child from in-person to all virtual instruction, you simply need to contact Ms. Jacobs via email to do so. The reason we continue to put this out there is we actually have been very successful at pulling most of our students off of our wait list, but Ashburton is at maximum capacity. Every square foot of our building that's usable for students is now covered with students. We have 525 students coming back to us in the building. And so we still have a few families that are on the wait list, and we're trying to get them in, but we just legitimately don't have floor space for them. So if you find that you're not going to use that seat, or you're not going to use it as routinely as you might have hoped, please let us know. No harm, no foul. We just want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our families here. So with that, what's going to come? April 6th or April 7th. So many of you now know that the original return date for phase 1.2 was April the 6th. Obviously, Monday, April the 5th is a no school day. Schools and offices are closed for spring break. We've now, April 6th and April 7th are going to be virtual days. April 7th was always a virtual day in the elementary world. That was more of a statement put out by the board for the secondary folks who would have normally shifted in a 4-day week to being an in-person schedule. So April 6th will be fully virtual for us. All of our students will be able to access their teachers and the learning virtually. April 7th will now be our regular Wednesday for all students. And then we'll begin back with phase 1.2 week A on April the 8th. Prior to that, you're going to get communications from your child's grade level with some specifics around schedule. Ms. Burton is going to share with Ms. Burton and her team are going to be sharing with the 5th grade families information about the schedule for family life, which coincides right with the return to in-person. So they're navigating that as well and doing a wonderful job of it. You'll continue to get updated principal communications from me. If you only have children in grades 4 and 5, you've been shielded from a lot of my emails. I did not want to overwhelm your inboxes, and we were learning things along the way. You will now be added to the listserv, and you will be getting all of the in-person updates as they become available. And I do want to shout out that our team, our student well-being team run by Ms. Reese, Ms. Strauss, Ms. Gillespie, they put together a wonderful welcome back student video that actually walks them through some of this health and safety protocols that they should expect to see as they enter the building. You'll receive that as a part of the email package that you get from me following this meeting. I recommend, if you haven't done so already, that you sit and watch it with your students. It does cover things like masks, hand washing, sanitizing, lunch, recess, arrival, and dismissal. And so you'll see some of our friendly faces plus TQ Star walking you through what it's going to look like on that first day that your students arrive. So let's talk about health and safety. Again, the most important thing we're doing these days is making sure that the entire community stays safe and stays healthy. So I'll talk about building access. We have always had open doors at Ashburton. We cannot have doors as wide open as we have had before. So at this time, there is no building access for visitors, for volunteers. It is only for staff and students. It is heavily managed. There is a lot of signing in and signing out. We want to make sure that we know who's in the building so that if we need to, we can do some contact tracing. So we don't have any visitors or volunteers. And if you need something from the office, you should contact us to set an appointment. I'm going to be sharing some information with you all that has not been shared with the larger community, but will be soon, to give an example of how we're having to navigate our new environment. When you come to the office, you'll use the call button at the main entrance, and then you'll be able to speak to the secretaries through the microphone. I do want to highlight, and many of you have been great about this, that the playground is no longer just wide open to families. While we have our recess, we can't have families for even the all virtual students coming into recess and commingling, because even recess is a heavily managed part of our day. So I mentioned kind of a change in procedure. So after spring break, when you come to the office to pick up your child, maybe they are leaving early for a dental appointment, or you overslept, or the child overslept and you got to school late, you're going to come to the front office, the main entrance. You're going to push the call button. We're going to have a QR code and a web link for you that you're going to scan. You're going to use that to sign your child in or out in a contactless way. We have a live look at that form that you'll fill out, and our secretaries will also talk to you through the box. You won't come into the building, you'll wait outside, and we will either bring your child to you or we will come to get your child and escort them to class. So we're going to be sending more information out to the community about that with a little tutorial video on how to do that. But it's, again, another step that we're taking to make sure that all of our staff and students remain safe and healthy at all times. All right, so masks. Masks are still required. Students, staff, visitors must wear masks at any time they are on our property, inside or out, unless they are actively eating or drinking. I'll share that there was this big concern that we were going to have all these kids coming back and they were going to be ripping masks off, and there were all these kids running around without masks. We have had zero issues since we came back with kindergarten through third grade with anybody not wearing a mask when they weren't supposed to. The kids have been doing a wonderful job with it. We have to remind them occasionally when it slips down below their nose to just pull it back up, but that's about as close as we've come to any types of issues. So again, your children will be required to wear masks unless there's a medical condition or disability. And we obviously would have already known about that because you would have contacted us about that. And we have made some arrangements with certain families depending upon the needs of their individual students. Again, students will have their masks off during the period of time where they're eating their food. It's not a free-for-all where I just take my mask off for a half hour, but during the time that I'm eating, I can have my mask off. During the time that I'm sipping water in the classroom out of my water bottle, I can certainly take my mask off. Cloth face masks are required for all students. That includes on the bus and any MCPS facilities. Students are encouraged to they should be bringing their own. When they get out of the car, they should already have it on. They should have it on when they get on the bus. And we recommend packing an extra one in their backpack or their carrying case just to have as a backup. Kids who have not done a lot of mask wearing may find that certain types or certain materials are not comfortable for them. We want to make sure that they are securely covering the nose, that there's no ties, no straps. We are requiring the ear loop mask, except in certain circumstances where they can have and this is with agreement from school administration, the one that clips in the back. And those tend to be for health or disability or other reasons. The ones with the ear loops, the more standard ones you see, are safer, especially when we're playing outside on the playground. So make sure that they don't have dangling ties or straps. We get a lot of bangles and things hanging from masks these days because they're becoming very much a fashion statement. We want to avoid those because they do present as a danger. Also, please make sure that you clean your child's mask and or have a couple of them in rotation. We want to make sure that children have a clean mask each day that they're bringing in. Please know that we have backup masks. We have extra masks, cloth masks. They're not cool. They're not fashionable. They're very plain looking. So if your child is particular about which superhero they're wearing on their face, please know that we don't stock the Avengers. So just make sure that you have them. There's no holes or tears. And speaking specifically about those masks, the question was, what will students be done for students who are physically unable to wear a mask? We've been working with those families. We've had no issues with that. If they forget a mask, we have plenty of masks available. We, again, have not had any issues with that. One or two students forgot their mask and we were able to provide them with them, or they dropped them in the mud on the playground. We were able to replace them. So really no issues with that, but I do want to be specific. There are two types of masks that are not permitted. Those are the bandana or the gator style masks. Those are prohibited. You cannot have your student wear those. We will give them one of the regular ear loop cloth masks. And also please be clear that the masks with respirators are not permitted either. We don't want to be expelling aerosols into the air any more than we have to. So please make sure that you don't send your child with one of those types of masks. Our staff know this because they've gone through many hours of training on masks and how to adequately prepare to be in the building in our COVID era. So just a couple of notes on routine cleaning. First off, we've always cleaned, believe it or not. Wednesday is not the cleaning day. We clean every day. And we do it differently now in the COVID era. There's a lot of sanitizing of all of our high contact surfaces. Your child's desk will be cleaned each and every night. All of our classrooms have soap, hand sanitizer. We have hand sanitizing stations throughout the building. But I want to be very clear. Our staff know this and our students who have entered the building know this. Cleaning is a shared responsibility. So we want to make sure that our students are cleaning their spaces as much as we are. But there's constant disinfection throughout the course of the day, in the evening, on Wednesdays, on weekends. It is a part of our normal procedures in the building. It is a daily activity. Our building service staff are absolutely phenomenal, and they've done a wonderful job. So if you haven't already gotten these, you'll start getting the health attestation forms. You must complete it every week. So once a week, you're going to click on the link will be in the presentation. It comes to you automatically in your email. You must fill it out before your child enters the building. It's going to ask you some simple questions about your exposure to COVID. Are there any signs or symptoms in your child? Are you waiting COVID test results, et cetera? If you answer no to all the questions, you can come to school. If you answer yes to any of the questions, you need to keep your child home. We'll be notified automatically that you selected yes, and our nurse will be in contact with you. There were some early issues where people misread the form one way or another. We contacted families, we corrected it right away, and we moved on with our day. Now, if you fill it out on Sunday and little Junior wakes up on Monday and has a cold, you're going to keep Junior home. If he has a fever, you're going to let us know that he would now answer yes to one of those questions. So you'll contact the health room for guidance on that. And we did get a lot of questions about spring break. We'll talk about traveling here in a second. But after spring break, our students are going to begin taking part in pool testing, which is a self-swab nasal test that our students will do for COVID-19. If a sample in the pool is found to be positive for COVID-19, the Department of Health and Human Services, School Health Services, will take those next steps and actually do some individual testing of students. There is an opt-out procedure for parents that is forthcoming. It has not been provided quite yet. It is currently in a pilot phase in some of the MCPS schools moving into and after spring break. So if a student does test positive, the school is responsible for identifying close contacts. Our staff are beginning to, or have been, I should say, signing in and signing out of classrooms. We've created an electronic tracking system using QR codes. They scan on their phone or their Chromebook as they enter rooms, so that if there's a positive case of any sort, we can go through the contact tracing protocols with every adult and every child that was in the space and determine what next steps need to be taken with DHHS. So again, MSDE has their definitions, DHHS has their definitions, and those definitions do change. But if there was something that required us to contact you, we absolutely would. But it's not always going to be that we need to contact families, if a kid has the sniffles or if there's nothing else really to go off of. But again, those communications would be coming from me. So many of you have asked, you're the group that comes in after spring break. What do we do about travel? Well, depending upon which week of March you ask me that question, I'd have a slightly different answer for you. So the updated answer is we all have a mutual interest in making sure that we're taking the steps to slow the spread of COVID-19. If you travel, you are encouraged to get a COVID-19 PCR test, not a rapid test, but a PCR, and isolate while you're awaiting the results of that PCR test. Once you have the results, if they're negative, you're encouraged to send your child to school. That's why April 6th and April 7th are now those virtual days in MCPS to afford families the opportunity to get that test and to give us flexibility as a system. So again, you're highly encouraged. You're not required, but again, we really encourage you for the safety and health of all of our staff and students. And always remember that your child, if they wake up with the sniffles, don't send them to school, but log them in virtually. That's how they can get the information, the learning that day. So the nice thing is that the learning doesn't stop, even when they're feeling under the weather. Very disappointing to my daughter. All right, so let's talk about the health room. It is not the health room of old. We have two separate spaces. One is the health room and one is triage. The health room is now limited to injuries. So think bloody nose or jammed fingers, maybe they need an ice pack, or medications, be they, you would have contacted the nurse, be they insulin for a diabetic, or some sort of daily medication that's taken and distributed from the health room. Most other cases beyond that are going to be handled through the triage room, because most of those other cases are going to be illness related and they're going to mirror the symptoms of COVID-19. And so if a child exhibits those symptoms, no, students are no longer just walking the hallways or going to the health room on their own. They're not even coming to the office on their own anymore, because we're trying to limit transitions. We're trying to limit exposure as best we can. But if they exhibit any of the signs of COVID-19, they're taken to the triage room, not to the health room. And if they go to the triage room, you would be contacted, and you would be picking your child up with probably a recommendation to see the pediatrician and to get a COVID-19 PCR test. If your child leaves from triage, they would not be able to come back to school until they've received a negative PCR test, or if they've isolated for 10 days. All of this will be provided to you in a document that's called the L4 letter, that's going to come from the Department of Health and Human Services. We know it may present as an inconvenience to some families, but it is an effort to make sure that we're slowing the spread and ensuring the health and safety of all of our students in the building. So when your child used to have that headache mysteriously around math 3 times a week, possibly the writing assessment they were taking gave them, tummy troubles, and they needed to come down to the health room and just lay down, we don't do that anymore. The nurses have been phenomenal at kind of saying, all right, maybe have we eaten our lunch yet? They're doing everything they can to get the kids back to school. But if they do believe that there's a legitimate symptom that they're presenting with, we would bring them to triage. Again, the health room is limited to injuries and medications only. Just to kind of, we get a lot of these questions. What should I do if my child wakes up, with a runny nose? We recommend keeping them home, because it is one of the things that, if they come to school and they're still struggling with it, they're going to go to triage. You're going to have to come pick them up. You're going to have to take them to the pediatrician and get that COVID-19 test. So some of the symptoms of COVID-19 that could prompt triage: coughing, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, loss of sense of taste or smell, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, stomach ache, headache, fatigue, congestion, runny nose, fever, chills. So there are a lot of them. And this is a new time and a new era, and we're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that it's not COVID-19 in the classroom, and to avoid it as much as we can. So again, just to be aware of that. And I understand that may be off-putting to some, and I understand that may be inconvenient to others, but it is for the health and safety of your child as much as it is for the health and safety of the 524 that are coming back to us. So I talked about triage. I want to be very clear that the guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services is that it is not a rapid test, but it is a PCR test only that would be accepted to welcome a child back into school. Some of our families have gone home, they've had colds, they've had other things. They get the negative test, they come back right away as soon as the symptoms have cleared up and as soon as they have that negative test in hand. If your child has a chronic condition and we see them down in the health room of the triage, the nurse will work with you on that. There may be some documentation that they're going to request you get from the pediatrician. If they have intestinal issues or they have allergies, we'll just need some documentation so that we can make a better informed decision when and if those symptoms do arise. But again, I highlight that during any type of isolation, children will always have access to the virtual learning. So whether they like that or not is up to them, but that's what's always going to be available. So that was kind of the presentation on health and safety. I'm going to jump into how do we safely get all of these kids into the building. Those of you that have had the opportunity to join us from phase 1.1 know a lot about what our procedures look like. So to break it up a little bit, I'm actually interested in who's here with us tonight. So go ahead and just answer the quick poll question. Tell me what grades your children are in. I did try to tell some of the 1.1 parents in the earlier email that this would be a little repetitive, and I think they're finding that, but that we were targeting this one to 4th and 5th. All right. So most of you did that, and as I would have assumed, many of you are 4th and 5th grade parents, so we again welcome you. 91%, that seem right? A lot of you. We'll say 59 out of 67. So yeah, up in there in the 90s. So it's great to have you all here. I am going to provide, again, very much the same information that we provided to 1.1. Obviously, you get the benefit of we've made some changes, and we're going to give you a little bit of information that's specific to 4th and 5th. Getting to and from school has not changed drastically. If you looked at our building from an aerial perspective, our buses arrive in one of 2 locations. It has been seamless getting kids on and off the bus, maintaining a 6-foot distance, staggering them into the building in small groups. I am floored by how quickly and efficiently we are getting our kids off of buses, off the playground as they walk and out of cars in the morning into classrooms with stops for hand sanitizing and grabbing of breakfast and into classrooms. So it has been absolutely wonderful to see. And we're doing it in about a 15 to 20 minute window, which in a normal school day, we were always tight to accomplish it that way. But all of our walkers arrive and dismiss from the playground area, or they can arrive through the main office. They will not dismiss through the main office entrance. Car riders are entering and exiting through the car loop, and our bus riders are exiting mostly through the cafeteria at this point, but occasionally they will enter from the gym as well, depending upon how many buses show up simultaneously. So before we do, we learned a lot in the first week or two about our neighbors. I met many of them by phone. They called to tell me all of the things they were seeing as they were out and about or looking through their windows during arrival and dismissal. And they asked that I provide some reminders to the community. So please don't block their driveways or their crosswalks. They love to call me when that's an issue. We want to make sure that we're following those traffic laws. Marnie's a resident of the neighborhood as much as anybody else. And so if Marnie lived by Ashburton on this side of the street, she probably does not want us blocking her driveway. Please make sure that you're following all of the traffic laws. We have gotten reports and complaints about illegal U-turns, people kind of cutting the line for car loop a little bit by sneaking up and jumping the line. Just be cautious about that. And then remember, when you exit the car loop, it's always been a right-hand turn. It continues to only be a right-hand turn to help with traffic. And one of the things that people seem to have forgotten, because it's been a long time since we were in the building, when you're in the car loop, use the through lane. When your child exits the car safely, pull into that left lane and you are on your way. We had a kind of a slow arrival on the first day because everybody was so excited they stayed in one single file line the whole time. So do use the through lane as you go through to help expedite traffic and ease the congestion for our neighbors. So if you arrive by car, first off, every child that comes for in-person instruction is going to be assigned a dismissal number for the car loop. It doesn't matter if they're normally a bus rider, normally a walker. If you're coming for phase 1.2, you are going to get that the first day that your child is in person. Please check their backpack. What we ask is on the first day for pickup, you come with a sign just like you did for materials distribution that has your child's name and their classroom teacher and grade level. And that helps us figure out how to get them out to you quickly. But when they come in the morning, cars will arrive by the loop in the back. Students should have their masks and jackets on, be ready to go. Everyone else in the vehicle needs to have their mask on. We're going to keep our windows rolled up the whole time, but we're going to open the door for your students. Do not release them out of the car until we have opened the door. That's a method for us to actually control the flow of kids into the building. At some points, we may direct your children not up the stairs into the car loop door, but actually up the ramp and through the walker's door if there's no line there. They'll have the same breakfast. They'll have the same hand sanitizing station there as well. But again, students shouldn't leave the car until they're greeted by a staff member. They'll then enter the building 6 feet apart. Everything is marked on the ground. They'll sanitize their hands and they'll grab the optional breakfast, which they will eat in their classrooms. For car loop, we want to be clear that it closes at 9 o'clock. We got really good at it this week. And a couple of parents, I think, were waiting for a line to die down and the line was never there. So 9:01, 9:02, they come peeling around the corner. Please be on time. 9 o'clock is the car loop. Once that door closes, you will have to take your car rider to the front of the building to be brought in, which means you have to park, you have to walk them up. It's a whole thing. Set the alarm 5 minutes earlier. We're asking for you to possibly stagger your arrival according to what you see on your screen. Last names A through M, 8:40 to 8:50. Last names N through Z, 8:50 to 9 o'clock. I'm going to be honest to say, if that doesn't work for you, we should be okay. This is something that we had prepped for, having never opened a school in a pandemic, but so far so good with arrival. Also, just know that if you arrive prior to 8:40 or 8:45 in the car loop, you're going to be waiting. You're not going to be able to release your child. They can't go up to the playground. Please stay there in your vehicle with them. Again, I mentioned, your kids will get out of the car door once we let them out. Make sure they have their masks on. They'll walk along the social distance markers. We have staff there that are directing them. Come on up the stairs, you're next. They sanitize their hands and they grab a pre-bagged breakfast and head to class. That breakfast, the lunch, and the supper that we'll talk about in a little bit are free for every student in the building. And so if they want the one item, if they want the whole breakfast, they can take it all. And so they'll grab it on their way in. When they dismiss by car, what you're going to do, and this is obviously after the first day, you'll have the official number and everything. But on the first day, for many of you who haven't been here before, you'll have a sign that has your child's name, grade, and teacher. A staff member is going to walk along and will collect those numbers prior to our actual dismissal. We communicate with our teachers through a Google Doc that when we get the number, it lights up in that order and that child is then dismissed to the car loop. We will then call the children down based on the names on the cards in your dashboard. We will load them into the car and you will go along your way. Again, you should have your windows rolled up. You should have a mask on. If you have any pets in the car, we do ask that you restrain them. We love seeing the puppies. We just want to make sure that the puppy doesn't jump out of the car and create chaos in the car loop. And then the other thing I want to be very clear about is you need to remain in your vehicles. We've gotten this down to a science. It's going unbelievably well for dismissal. And we said that if you wanted to, you can always park your car and you can walk up and pick your child up as a walker. You must communicate that they're a walker, though. Please do not park your car and come to the car loop to pick your child up if they're being dismissed as a car rider. You're going to get me telling you to please get back in your vehicle, rejoin the line. You're probably now at the end of the line. It is going to slow it down significantly. We also don't want overcrowding in the car loop for the safety of our staff. So again, if you're coming by car and you're dismissing by car, please stay in the car. It is going really, really fast now. So don't be concerned about waiting in a long line. I will say, and I'm probably going to send something out to the community, we've got people that are camping out in the car loop as early as 2:30, trying to be first in line to get their kids. And we know that that line is now stretching all the way to and down Old Georgetown Road. We're being able to dismiss everybody in about a window of about 15 minutes. So if you didn't want to show up at 2:30 and you maybe wanted to show up at, 3:20, your kid's probably going to be in the car by 3:25, 3:30 at the latest. So no need to rush, no need to back the lineup. Please be patient with us, but we're making it work. Again, I mentioned don't walk up to the car loop for pickup. And if you have a change to your child's dismissal, I'll talk about this here in a second, you must notify the secretaries in the main office no later than 2:45. After 2:45, your child is going to be dismissed by their regular route. And please do not count on the teachers to be the ones that are monitoring email to look for dismissal changes at 2:44. You must alert the secretaries. They will handle the communications from there. We appreciate you doing that for us. Walking to school, we still use 2 legs and 2 feet. You can come in the main office or you can come in the playground breezeway. When you do, they sanitize their hands and they grab a breakfast. So those doors open about 8:45, 8:48 each morning so that the kids are at their classroom door by around 8:50 and ready for instruction at 9 o'clock. When you dismiss for walkers, they'll go directly from their classroom to the playground. So if you're meeting your child, please meet them on the playground. Make sure that you are socially distanced from the other parents, but do wave and smile at them. We are going to release older children first as walkers in case they have to go to the playground to then pick up their kindergarten walkers there. Also remember that you should, at any time you're on campus, that includes in the car loop, the playground, anywhere else, you should have a mask on. And we saw a lot of our furry friends this last week. Please remember that there are no dogs permitted on campus from 8 o'clock to 4:30. All right, so when you ride the bus to school, all of you have let us know at this point that your child is in need of bus transportation. It is well documented. We have worked with the bus depot to ensure that there's enough space on those buses for your children to be there on. They will be picked up at the bus stops that have been posted and shared. They'll get on the bus. There's a bus occupancy limit of about 22. If children are from the same household, they can sit together on the same bus. And then when they get to school, we'll dismiss them together as well. They enter the building. If the bus is earlier than our doors opening, we have a staging area in the all-purpose room that we've been using, and it actually has been working quite well. that we hold our kids till about 8:45 or 8:48, and then we release them into the hallway in small groups at that time, where they can pick their breakfast up on the way to class. Again, nobody's required to pick the breakfast up, but it is a great option to have. You'll see some of the different staging areas depending upon where the bus drops off. You also see on the far right a picture of our staging area in the all-purpose room. We have a lot of spaces around the school marked with those 6-foot distances. This is a staging area also in the afternoon when we dismiss for the buses. For our kindergarten bus riders, they get to sit in the chairs and wait for their buses to arrive. Again, when you ride the bus home, they're going to start being dismissing buses at 3:20. Kids will come to the cafeteria. There's no longer using the gymnasium, but we're using the cafeteria. And students are pretty much at this point walking out and getting on buses. We have not had to hold many buses because the transportation department is doing such a wonderful job. Also, I want to be clear, there are no play dates where the kid rides the bus home if they're not regularly on that bus. There is simply not occupancy or space for those things to happen. So please, if you're doing that, make sure that you have arrangements with the other parent to pick the children up at school as either walkers or car riders, and that you alert the secretarial staff prior to 2:45 that day if there's a change. This is also the first time I'm going to cue up the fact that our students have to bring their Chromebooks home each and every day. We'll talk about more about that in just a second. I've talked about 9 times now about notifying the office by 2:45 p.m. if you have a change to your child's dismissal for the day. Always include the teacher, but do not expect the teacher to be monitoring email throughout the course of the day. Please make sure that you notify the secretaries in the main office. Again, our teachers are spending their day teaching. We're spending the day monitoring email so that we can help facilitate the operations and get the kids home safely so that our teachers are focused on their primary function in the building. So let's talk about what that looks like for the teachers during the day. I mentioned that bus riders can begin arriving about 8:35. We stage them in the APR. Our doors open at 8:48 for car riders and walkers. We also start dismissing bus riders out of the APR at that point. Instruction runs from 9 to 11:30. It's the same as the all virtual schedule. The lunch, recess, and wellness block runs 11:30 to 1, just like the all virtual schedule. There might be some slight tweaks to your grade level schedules depending upon if they have the last recess or not. That information will come from the grade level prior to April the 8th for you. And then our second instructional block runs from about 1 o'clock to 3:10. 3:10 is the end of instruction. We do our afternoon announcements, and we are sending our first groups of kids out as early as 3:15. Those are the first wave of car riders and our walkers. 3:20 is when our bus riders begin their dismissal. We talked about the hallways. There are sanitizing stations throughout. You know what? If you see a sanitizing station, your kid's going to be able to give it a squirt wherever they are in the building. It's not just entering and exiting, but it's really throughout the course of the day. There's plenty of hand sanitizing stations throughout the building. There's also hand sanitizer and soap and water in all of the rooms. Obviously, masks are expected at all times, including when they're traveling the hallways. Basically, anytime they're on campus, including outdoor at recess, they should have that. Very few of our areas in the school are marked as one-way travel. They tend to just be which side of the stairwell you're going up or coming down. But we have plenty of visual markers, both to maintain that 6-foot social distance, as well as to help our students navigate the hallways. Many of your 4th and 5th graders have been doing this for years. We've been calling it surfing the hallway, though, and they have their arms sticking kind of straight out like they're on a surfboard to make sure that they're about 6 feet away from the person in front or behind them. Kids have done a phenomenal job with it in the first couple of weeks here. During that lunch, recess, and wellness block, all of our students will have about 30 minutes for lunch, 30 minutes for recess, and about 30 minutes for wellness. You'll get a link to the specific schedule. We'll talk about recess and the rotations that it includes here in just a minute. Let's talk about space. So I mentioned that right now we're operating on that 6-foot social distance. It has not gone down to the 3 feet yet because our guidance comes from about 3 layers of government above us, and it has not gotten down that far. Maybe it won't, maybe it will, we shall see. Our bathrooms have limited occupancy, and specific classrooms are actually assigned to use specific hallway restrooms to limit transitions, to limit the traffic, to make the facilities more accessible. Our students sign in and out when they go to use the restroom in the hallway. Again, that's a contact tracing measure for us. It's also a time telling practice as our kids learn to read a clock and sign in and out according to that clock. There is limited capacity in each of the bathrooms. They are marked for social distance. We have closed off some of the sinks, some of the urinals, some of the stalls, depending upon each of the restrooms, again, to promote social distancing. And again, so far, so good. Everything seems to be moving swimmingly. Our classrooms and hallways, our desks are all spread about 6 feet apart. That's where the student is to where the student is. There are no more classroom libraries, no more centers, no more carpets, no more kidney tables, no more clusterings of desks together, no more shared spaces in general. That includes the cubbies, that includes the coat hooks. All of our students are provided with a desk that has storage in it, as well as 2 chairs, one that they can hang their coat and their backpack on, and the other that they can put their self into. And how the child chooses to use both chairs is really up to them, but it's really there for storage. Assigned seating does happen in each and every classroom. Some teachers allow the kids to pick the seat the first day. Some have already pre-assigned it because they've got multiple rotations of students. But the idea is that a student seat is a student seat because it does help us with our contact tracing should it be necessary. I talked about 2 desks and 2 chairs for every child. I talked about the cubbies not being used. And many of our students will be bringing home many of their materials each and every night. This is especially pertinent for our kids that are on an A-week, B-week rotation. We have been working over the first couple of weeks to cut down on some of the things that are going back and forth. We want to cut some of the weight out of the backpack. You also may want to check, I found some backpacks this week that when fully empty still weigh about 4 or 5 pounds. They have all kinds of cool hooks and gadgets and steel plates and belts and buckles and things like that. If you find your child struggling with the weight of the backpack, you might want to start with the actual backpack. Fun fact, a Chromebook weighs about 3 pounds. If they bring a 16-ounce bottle of water, that's 1.2 additional pounds. A couple of pieces of paper and a folder and some pencils shouldn't add much weight to what the child's carrying. Also know Miss O'Reilly, I've been giving her full responsibility to do a lot of lunges, shoulder presses, things like that. These kids are going to be bulked up for swim season when we do get there. But we are working on ways to reduce the amount of material that's going home each and every day. And I'll talk about one change that your children will see right after spring break. So this is where I shift over to 4th and 5th grade. At this time, we are not switching classes. That's something we've done a lot of. Some of our students see the same teacher all day. Some see their homeroom teacher for a large chunk of the day and see one other teacher for another content area. We will not be switching classes. Our teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5 did a lot of great work to figure out who was coming on week A and who was coming on week B so that they had the optimal learning experience in the building. Meaning they had the most direct instruction that could be provided, that they were grouped accordingly, that they were going to get the best experience, and I thank them for that. We did not do a simple split it down the middle of the alphabet. We wanted to be intentional so that our teachers could get the best out of the experience and your kids could get the best of the experience. ESOL and special education services can be provided in the classroom. They can also be pulled out to a separate space. Those spaces are sanitized in between, so please do know that. If a student's in one room, so if you have Miss Burton and you're paired with Miss Perry, Miss Burton's homeroom and teaches you math, but Miss Perry teaches you your literacy block, you'll be live direct with Miss Burton in the room for that. And then when it's time for literacy, you'll be accessing Miss Perry through the Chromebook. So we can't transition students back and forth, but that is the best way that we can do instruction when we have multiple programs happening simultaneously. So instruction will look a little bit different from one space to the next. There are situations, as I just described. Some of you have been notified that your child's teacher is working remotely. That means that they're going to be providing the vast majority of the instruction through the Chromebook, but we'll have other adults in the room with them, helping them to access the learning. So that's where some students will have teachers working remotely. Again, I've already notified the parents that are impacted by a change to their child's teaching assignment. And again, if your child, I know some of our teachers are having babies, getting ready to have babies. If they go on long-term leave, the long-term substitute will be the teacher that will be providing both the virtual and the in-person instruction. They do have to come into the building, so we'll have them here directly providing direct instruction as is available. So one of the new things with our 4th and 5th graders, they're a little older. They can navigate the hallways in a little bit of a safer way. So we are working on something, my team was working on this today, to be able to provide them the opportunity to utilize the all-purpose room to have lunch. We can work in about 2 to 3 classes of students into the APR simultaneously. So they get a change of pace, a change of scenery. It helps us from a staffing perspective. It also makes it easier for the kids to have their lunch in the cafeteria. All children will have access to the lunch that I described here in just a few minutes. And we'll talk about what that looks like, but we will be utilizing the all-purpose room for lunches for grades 4 and 5 as we project at this time. So on your screen, you see a picture. Nobody's seen this picture yet. 6 pallets of these beauties arrived yesterday morning. These are the cases that MCPS has promised for the children that are using Chromebooks. I use cases lightly. They're like briefcases, and they have plenty of space for a Chromebook, for chargers, for headphones, for folders, for all kinds of stuff to go back and forth from school. Each of your children will be assigned one of these. If your child would like to use this instead of the backpack, we recommend that. If your child wants to try to put this into their backpack, I don't recommend that. Again, we're trying to cut the weight of the backpacks. We've had some of our grade levels experimenting with these in advance of our distribution of them. We'll be signing them out to each and every one of your children. They would become their property of MCPS. They'll be returned with the Chromebooks very much in the same way. But a child could actually exit the vehicle with this little laptop briefcase bag, their lunch and a water bottle, and they're good to go for the day. They don't need anything else with them. They don't need chargers. They don't need toys. Obviously, those aren't coming to school. But we really want to try to see if we can cut weight. If a child comes back and forth with nothing but the Chromebook, that's cool. That's all they're really going to need in the classroom. We are providing all of our in-person students with a pencil box with materials, supplies that can stay at the school, so they can keep all their personal supplies at home and not have to carry things back and forth. So again, the Chromebook at the very least will go home back and forth each day. Your child's teacher will talk about other specifics that may need to go back. So let's talk about breakfast and lunch. Breakfast is free, lunch is free, and we'll talk about the supper snack here in a second, also free. It is pre-bagged. It is sitting on tables as the children come in, and it is available until 9:45. So if your child is late and you're dropping them off at the main office, they can still get breakfast up until 9:45. Breakfast and all the foods in MCPS are temperature controlled, so they can't sit out for too long. 9:45 is our cutoff. Again, it is free to all students. Every morning, your child has the opportunity to order the lunch for the day, and I'll show you how to access the menu here in a second. April's has not been posted, but you can take a look at March. Having sampled many of the items, I can tell you that they are the traditional high quality of the MCPS Department of Food Nutrition Services cafeteria program. But your child will have the opportunity to take the school lunch. It is free. There is no charge to their account. Or you can pack your child's lunch. It's up to you. Again, if you pack the lunch, it adds weight to the backpack. Think about that as you go through thinking about your child's lunch for the day. And all of our students will be able to order what's called the supper snack, which is an additional meal that they can take home each night. On Monday night, if they order it in the morning first thing so the cafeteria can prepare it, it's delivered to the students to take home at the end of the day. It is free. On Monday night, they take home the supper for that evening. On Tuesday, they actually take home the supper for Tuesday, as well as the breakfast, lunch, and supper for Wednesday. On Thursday, they take home the supper for Thursday. And they already gotten the food for Wednesday. Thursday, they take home the supper for Thursday. And on Friday, they take home not the supper for Friday. They take home the breakfast and lunch for Saturday and the breakfast and lunch for Sunday. So there's plenty of food to be had. There's plenty of food that can go home. More information will come about that. If you just want to be on the regular list to just get the supper every time, you can email your child's teacher. They'll keep a little list right by the computer, and they'll always just add in your child to the daily count for that. So in the presentation, when you get it, we'll talk about the menu itself, but this is obviously the menu for March. It's a very eclectic menu, a lot of different choices. There is one choice, by the way, I'll use that word carefully, per day. There is no alternate choice. If your child has allergy issues, you need to contact the cafeteria. They can make arrangements for you at that point. If the children are eating in the cafeteria, which some of our 4th and 5th graders will, and some of them will be eating in their classrooms, it is the only time where they can have their mask removed, and only for brief periods of time where they're actively eating. Again, you'll be able to see the menu for March as an idea of what it might look like in April. I talked about the supper snack offering. We are encouraging parents, given that we're eating in confined spaces, to, whenever they can, avoid sending any lunches with peanuts or tree nuts. If your child's classroom has a child with a severe anaphylaxis allergy, meaning a life-threatening form of anaphylaxis, you'll be notified that that is a peanut, tree nut-free classroom, and we'll talk about how we can make arrangements for that. We do have other children that have peanut and tree nut allergies, and we have protocols that we support them with through that. So recess is going to look different. Currently, there's no shared equipment. Katie Burton has been the champion of how can we put playground balls and hula hoops in the hands of the children. We are working on that. Every time we do that, we can't share the materials and we have to sanitize the materials. So we are working through how to do that. The guidance changed as of this morning. I texted her right away. It probably made her day. So we are working on that. But Ms. Reese and Ms. Locke have set up a number of rotations around the building. We're using some non-traditional spaces to allow our students to be in kind of smaller areas, grouped maybe 1 or 2 classes, maybe 3 classes to an area. And again, recess is socially distanced. There are no shared materials. They may absolutely use the equipment. We wash our hands before recess, after recess. Masks are worn throughout. Extra masks are available. Hand sanitizing is done on the playground as well. Again, a parent asked a great question in the last orientation. Yes, we still do socially distance during recess, and our staff do work with students. So we have a rotational schedule. So students might be in one area on Monday, another area on Tuesday, and 2 more areas on Thursday and Friday. So again, we're trying to keep it engaging for the kids. Obviously, there's limitations on what we can actually do for recess, but Ms. Reese and Ms. Locke have done some phenomenal work around making this work, and we'll continue to upgrade it as the guidance allows us to do so. Anybody that has an issue with mask wearing at recess, especially as the weather gets warmer, we'll work with them. It's a teachable moment. They might need to take occasional breaks just so that they're ready to go. But we don't want to approach the mask issue from a disciplinary standpoint. This is new to all of us, and especially our kids, some of them who might be your very own children who've not worn a mask more than maybe a couple minutes at a time while they were riding in the car with you to the grocery. Now we're asking kids to wear it for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and that's a big shift. But as I said before, so far, so good. We talked about the playground equipment can be used. Obviously we do the disinfecting and the cleaning as is necessary. But at this time, share items like balls and hula hoops are not to be used, but we are working on how we can make arrangements for that. And again, we've talked about some cleaning and disinfecting protocols throughout. They're the same that we would use inside and outside. Really quickly on technology, kids do need to bring those Chromebooks back and forth each day. A change as of this morning. If your child who was learning in person in the building has an issue with their Chromebook, the first stop is not 45 West Goody Drive, it is the Media Center. So that's a parent should be cheering loudly about that because it saves you a drive to Rockville to replace a broken Chromebook. We can start the process for you there. If it is something you would need to pay for, you would be contacted by somebody that's not me. I asked that principals, or we were told principals don't need to be in the business of hounding people for screen repair monies. We are providing headphones to all of our students. There are plenty of backups if students forget theirs. If they have a pair that they really, really like, pack them in those sweet briefcases that we're going to give them right after spring break so they go back and forth with them. So again, that's what we're talking about. We talk about a Chromebook case. So I'm going to stop talking because that was the bulk of how to successfully get rolling with this process. And I will say that our teachers are going to pick that ball up on the first day that they're with children. We already have a great plan in place for that. They tour the building, they do the health and safety routines and protocols. But the most important thing is how we're supporting the kids socially and emotionally as they come into the building for the first time in more than a year. Some of them have grown by 6 feet as we've seen them come into the building. It is shocking to see how much these kids have grown since we last saw them. So we have the incomparable Ms. Strauss with us. She's going to talk through some of those things that you can do as you prepare your children to come into the building in a socially and emotionally successful way. So Ms. Strauss.
Thank you so much, Mr. Knowles. And we can take a deep breath. That was a lot of information. Remember, it's always okay there's a lot going on with our school reopening for in-person instruction. And just take a deep breath. We're going to be able to handle this together. Next slide, please. So I wanted to say that it is very normal to have lots of different feelings related to the reopening, coming into in-person instruction, to dealing with COVID-19 and all information about what is happening with our pandemic. So realize that your students may be feeling nervous, worried, scared, excited about coming back to the building. All feelings are very normal. Let them talk about them. You might be also having lots of different feelings about the reopening. Make sure that you have an opportunity to model how you speak about feelings to your children as well. This makes it all very normalized. I'm sorry, Mr. Mullenhouse, could you go to the next slide, please? And you can go to the next one too. Okay, because all feelings are normal. So again, it's really important for you to be able to explain to your children why they're coming back into the building. What is your decision as a family to bring your children back to the building? Because some people are not coming back. So every family is making their own decision, and that is totally okay. But children need to have some information to understand what their reasons are. So let them ask questions to you about the reopening, about their decisions about as a family, and answer them as much as you can. But if you can't, we're here for you. So it's okay to say to your children, you know what, I don't know that answer, but I'm going to ask somebody at school to find out information. So again, we want kids to be able to express themselves, their feelings. We want kids to ask questions. We want them to be able to be open to our explanations. And we also want to be able to answer their questions. So again, we're trying to just have a lot of conversation. In addition, there are a lot of staff members here at Ashburton. So talk to your students about who they can go to, ask questions to, or get explanations from when they're at school, because they're used to having you around. You've been with them for this whole year, but now we're the people that we're asking questions to. So talk to them about who might you ask a question to when you're in the building, if you have something that you need or some question that you have. We want to know who the trusted adults are at the building. Next slide, please. So as always, there are so many things you can do to make sure we can reduce some of these worries. First of all, again, having that explanation for your children, understanding why they're going back to school as a family decision about either your working situation, about safety conditions. So they understand that why they're going back to school and why it's important to your family. We also know we had a time change recently. It's very dark in the morning. So again, make sure you're adjusting bedtime routines, wake up routines, because now they are definitely commuting to the building. That's a lot harder for our older students sometimes because they're used to sleeping in. But again, we want to change that so they're ready for in-person instruction. What's been helpful for a lot of families is that routine at night, making sure that clothes are put out, backpack is packed. If you are going to be taking a lunch from home, making sure you know what you're going to be packing for that. Anything you can do at night to prepare for the morning is especially helpful. Also, our students are wearing masks, so we want to make sure they know how to put them on correctly, snugly around their mouth and their nose, and also independently. Your children are definitely old enough to do it themselves, but sometimes they have to really loop it around their ears to make sure they're really staying on their face in a snug fashion. So practice that as well. They also might want a very comfortable mask. So make sure you try out different versions. A lot of the cute versions I've seen, sometimes they don't fit the older students. So again, sometimes they're adorable, but they really are for smaller children. So make sure the face mask is actually appropriate for your age child. And you can do this now by practicing some mask wearing around home when you're in the community, just so they're more used to wearing it when they come back for instruction for our 6 hours. Thanks so much. Next slide, please. Okay, also, of course, proper hand washing. We really want our students to lather up with hand washing with soap and water for 20 seconds, getting in between their fingers, into the joints of the fingers, and backs of hands are always important. We also know that, we've been on Zoom for many months now, but we really want our students to be able to self-advocate, take care of their own problem-solving skills when they are having any trouble, and also reach out to our staff members here if they do need help. But again, if it's next few days or even during spring break, if you're able to give them a little bit more independence and problem solving to let them have that self-advocacy skill is really important. We also know that it's a lot of nervousness and stressful feelings about re-entering the building. We've been practicing a lot about mindfulness breathing, calming ourselves down, slowing ourselves down with taking good deep breaths, and positive affirmations, saying positive things in our head to encourage ourselves to do our best, to try our hardest. These are great things for our students to be able to do so they can calm themselves down if they get into a stressful situation. I can do this. This is going to be okay. All good things for children to be able to regulate themselves for. Additionally, because lunch is right in the middle of the day, we really do not have snack opportunities in school this year. So from now until our reopening, in-person instruction, make sure that you are limiting some snacking to just breakfast, lunch, and dinner so they can really have that energy to go through the day. And also, we do have, of course, bathroom breaks for our students, but we want to align them to what the classroom is doing too, so they don't miss any instruction. So again, if they can make sure that they are listening to teachers, if teachers saying we're going on a break in 15 minutes, that's a perfect time to go to the bathroom. This way they don't miss any instruction, even when they're in the classroom. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. So also, as we know, since you do have these preteens here in 4th and 5th grade, they're going to have some behavior changes with all these changes that are happening to them. This is very normal. Adjusting does take time. So we wanted to prepare you for some realities that your children might be going through. First off, going in person is going to, as they do in September usually, it tires them out being in school. It's just a different opportunity for them to be moving around or sitting or just thinking differently. Sometimes they react in a more tired way when they come home from school. Other times they might be even more hyper because maybe they have been sitting or a lot of things have happened to them and they're very excited to share with you. So again, that behavior change might occur. Additionally, even though some of them are very excited about this new normal of going back to school, it is different. And so they might be excited about that or they might be disappointed in that. Both are normal reactions to different changes, but again, we want you to be prepared for that. Likewise, sometimes they actually might have enjoyed being at home for this year, and they might be jealous of other siblings who are staying home. So be prepared that, the differences of going to school or staying home might be something that they might want to talk to you about. Additionally, we mentioned all these materials that they're responsible for. That might be overwhelming for them to have some more responsibilities before they've been able to just come down into the kitchen and be able to set up shop there. Now they have to be able to be responsible for the materials and going on buses. It's a lot different. So again, they might be overwhelmed with some of the responsibilities. Additionally, sometimes when the Chromebook comes off at the end of the day, they've had a lot of free time. But now if they're commuting back and forth from school to home, they might be losing some of that free time they used to have to play around. So they might resent some of that time and they might need to find some other times that they can have fun with their friends or family in more free time areas. Additionally, not all our students are coming back into the building. So we do anticipate sometimes friendships might be changing because students do find friends with people who they're spending more time with or less time with. And therefore you are thinking, your child might be thinking about, well, I'm making a new friend here and maybe my other friend feels a little left out. So we do, we're here for you and supporting you. If there's any friendship changes, we can support you if you let us know. But again, anticipate some of these changes as well. And again, it's because we're here. We're here for you. We understand that there's a lot going on with your students. Their well-being is our biggest concern as well, their health and safety. So we are doing all things that we can to make sure that they are feeling included and taken care of. So we're keeping things routine, we're organized, we are making sure that we're teaching them the expectations, how to follow things along in the classroom in our school. We're working on our morning meeting skills and our social emotional lessons, so we're caring about their whole well-being. We're also going to be providing them opportunities to socialize with each other and learn how to interact in a safe, socially distanced way, which might be new to them. We're going to help them facilitate new friendships and relationships. We're going to keep on checking on them to make sure that they're adjusting well. And of course, we do have a well-being team at school who's been monitoring their well-being for this past year, talking to teachers and parents, making sure that we can support your students. So again, we're here to help make sure that they have a great adjustment back to being in the building, but for also the rest of the year.
All right, so Ms. Rubin's going to talk a little bit about the first day schedule, which again is still 2 weeks out and it's still being tweaked from one grade level to the next. But Ms. Rubin, some quick thoughts?
Sure. So just to clarify, the first day means April 8th for A week, and then the following Monday for B week. And so what's going to happen on that first day, in order to give the in-person students a chance to really get acclimated and learn all these brand new expectations, go on a little tour of the school to see all the new things that we have put in place for their safety and their health, we're going to be adjusting the schedule a little bit. We're going to give some time in the morning where our virtual students are completing some asynchronous work so that the teachers can really take that time with the in-person students to get them situated. You will be hearing more details from your child's teacher about what time, what that schedule is going to look like. It really will impact the virtual students more because they're not going to log on until a little bit later in the morning. So just keep an eye out for that. The schedule on the first day for A week and first day for B week is going to look a little bit different.
All right, and with that, we're going to jump into some questions. I'm going to answer three questions that keep coming up in the chat, just kind of quickly here. So you'll know that if your child was A week or B week because you would have received that automated letter from me. You can also log into Parent View, and you can see it right there under the Student Information tab. So if you log into that, you'll be able to see that. A question was asked about water bottles and being able to refill those water bottles. We do have a bottle filling station. We're actually working with procurement to get more of them added in. So we ask that your child come with a full water bottle, and if needed, they can fill up their water bottle during the course of the day. We also work with the Department of Food and Nutrition Services to have water bottles available, disposable ones, for children that do forget their water bottles. So far, the kids have been really good about that. Question came up about why can't we switch? And again, I wanted to preface that at the beginning by saying that we cannot. For a couple of reasons. None of them having to do with vaccines, none of them having to do with any types of board decisions. But when we looked at local schools, and this is happening in many of the elementary schools, sometimes it comes down to sheer capacity. And so the example I'll use is that there's not always an even split between the number of kids coming back for one math class versus another. And if I were to try to switch them, I wouldn't have space to be able to do that type of switching from one classroom to the next. So part of it is capacity. Part of it is also just being able to access the learning in this fashion is what we're looking for students. So again, a lot of this has to do with capacity. I wish, again, I said at this time, obviously things can change and guidance will change as well. But right now we're trying to minimize the transitions as well as make sure we actually have the space to pull this off right now. 525 is about the maximum number of spaces that we have at Ashburton across all of our grade levels. We do not have a lot of flexibility to switch classes to make these types of things work. We have staff that are currently working out of closets to make this work. So it is very much an issue of space right now. I wish I had the space of NB or over a Walter Johnson to make this work for the kids. Questions about what does it look like if your child's teacher is working remotely? So your child will have an adult in the room that can provide them with some direct instruction, some hand-over-hand support. But the primary learning and instruction is going to come from that teacher who is working remotely. There was a question earlier in the chat about, is there a metric that we hit where the teacher would come back? And so I want to be clear that if a teacher is assigned to work remotely, it's due to a staffing or operational concern. And I cannot be specific about it. I know that's a vague way to say it. But I want to be very clear about that there is a very rigorous process that we go through. 20 minutes prior to kicking off this meeting, I was on the phone with the ADA specialist reviewing some cases. So, obviously staffing is an ongoing concern. As we've been saying since roughly November, our model very much depends upon the return to in-person data, preference data from parents, which was very high, and the availability of staff, which has also been extraordinarily high. Every single teacher at Ashburton was assigned to come back, and those that couldn't, due to one reason or another, we had to come up with a plan to be able to support the students who were preferring to come back. So there is some clarification on that. A couple of times this has been noted. Our fifth graders are not in the modular building due to the availability of facilities and the HVAC being in the building is much better. Those of you may not know, but we had a $25 million HVAC renovation project that was completed this past summer. We are a 4 diamond rating, which is the highest that you can have in MCPS. So we have a wonderful system there. I also want to highlight in terms of the specials, all of our specials are taught live with the teacher in the room. PE is actually in the gym or outside, depending upon the weather. Mr. Spencer and Ms. O'Reilly have actually figured out how to schedule where our all virtual students have an all virtual PE approach, and our in-the-person kids have something that looks closer to normal PE. One of the main reasons behind that is what you have seen your kids doing in terms of running in place in the living room for the last 6 months of this school year. We actually cannot do that type of moderate heart rate exercise in the building in a classroom with 15 kids in it. So by actually moving to the gym or moving outside, we're actually able to do more than we could even in a virtual setting. So they've adjusted their schedules accordingly. More information coming on that. I'll add that all instrumental music is virtual. As I mentioned, we don't have space. We quickly ran out of space, and I joked in a few town halls back about every trombonist needing 54 square feet of floor space to make it work. We didn't have enough to come anywhere near that. So all of the instrumental music is going to be live. It's going to be virtual. So there will be some changes coming to the schedule. Mr. McAllister or Mr. Kepler will be in touch with you. It will still be Tuesdays and Wednesdays, though, but they'll be altering that. A quick question, then I'm going to hand over to Ms. Rubin to kind of field some questions for us. But in terms of interactions with kids, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to socialize, but we're not going to have large convenings of kids. As I said, there is a lot of rotational approaches to recess to really limit what's been called cross-pollination of students. We've been tasked with trying to figure out how to make that work, given that we've got some very loose structures in terms of recess and lunch that you traditionally don't have when you're just sitting in a classroom all day. But that being said, it's much more of an increase over what they've been getting virtually. I saw a couple of questions about socializing. That has been the greatest part about this, is seeing kids in the hallways, walking into classrooms and working with them, seeing them socialize with each other. That's definitely been a huge, huge, huge bonus for something like that. So Ms. Rubin, I'm going to go ahead. You've been monitoring the chat. Those were the notes that I jotted down. You want to pitch some questions in the remaining 15 minutes?
Sure. So can we send notification of opting out of meals? So if their child's opting in, but they don't want them to be, can they send notification of that?
There actually is no process for that. I would say just connect with your child and tell them that they don't want to pick the meals up. Again, nothing is being given to them or forced upon them. If they don't want it, they don't have to have it. If you want to send the luncheon, that's totally fine. So it's not an automatic at Ashburton. I know some schools are actually doing that. We are not one of the schools that is doing that.
Will you be providing bus information?
So bus information has been provided a couple of times already. We will certainly resurface that. The bus stops have already been posted. You can find them on our school website. And then you'll know where to board the bus on the first day that your child returns for in-person. Again, given the question that was asked earlier, I want all of you to go back to your parent view account and reconfirm whether your child is week A or week B. If your child comes to school on the wrong week, they will be brought down to the all-purpose room. You will be called to come and pick them up. So please make sure that you bring them to school on the correct week.
All right. I think you answered the question about general music and instrumental music. If a child is new to Ashburton, is there a way that they can tour the building prior to April 8th?
So unfortunately not, but do know that this was the same circumstance for all of our kindergartners. They had never been in the building before. Our staff were ready to help them into the building, and then we actually did a tour with them as a part of their routines and procedures work in the morning. They practiced how to exit the building in the case of an emergency. They practiced where to go if they were loading the bus. So the teachers did actually tour the building, and we'll do that again with our 4th and 5th graders, all of them, even if they've been with us for 6 years.
And will patrol meetings and AETV continue to be virtual?
So Ms. Burton, do you have any information on patrols? I don't want to put you on the spot. I thought Ms. Burton she was just here a second ago, but she just disappeared. So AETV has shifted forms a little bit, but Ms. Walker has been working with some of our 4th and 5th graders. We cannot do it in the communication studio for 2 reasons. One is right now the communication studio is the library. All of our books, or most of our books, are in there right now on rolling carts, so that Ms. Walker has space to do her Holds to Go program. The media center is not a space that's accessible to students because it is where our staff are actually having to do a lot of their planning and their work. So your students will see on their tour, some of the spaces, we can't use the staff lounge as a staff lounge. You know, our teachers no longer have access to refrigerators, microwaves, coffee pots, things like that. There are very strict protocols that we're following right now, because the last thing I want is a cadre of teachers suddenly having to stay home, and you don't want me teaching multiple classes simultaneously and trying to figure out how to do that. So the best thing we can do is stay safe and healthy and stick with these protocols.
Can we sign out computer bags in the future once the child knows how much material they will need to commute with?
So we're working on a process right now where we're going to pre-assign a bag to every child. Honestly, pallets arrived yesterday. I thought I brought one. I brought one over here. I'm not going to run across my room and show it to you, but we'll work with you on that. We'll probably connect with our staff to figure out what works best. I think it's more important for the little guys who are weigh as much as their Chromebooks sometimes, and we're trying to figure out how to balance out that weight for them. We have been working with our teachers. They're doing a phenomenal job. Kindergarten and first grade, we just got into place these pencil box systems. We're getting ready to stuff them. They're going to be in desks so that the kids don't need to haul that stuff back and forth. So we'll talk about those bags. They weren't quite what we were expecting. They're very nice. If any of us ever go back to a college campus, I think we're ready for class if we were to carry one of these. But I thought they were more of like a silicone case of some sort. They apparently are not. So we're trying to adjust and see what we can do with those.
All right, not a question, but deserves to be said. AES has the best staff since 1995. Thank you all for the information and updates. We're getting some thank yous. And I actually am not seeing anything else.
We've got 11 minutes. They're burning questions. Oh, so there was a question earlier, two questions. One is, you don't have to change your arrival. Really, however your child gets to school, we're cool with. Obviously, if you need bus transportation, however, you have to let us know. Because if you show up and you're the 23rd student on the bus and you didn't let us know, the 22 children are going to sit on that bus and they're going to have to wait for another bus to show up to then take part of the load, put it on another bus. We sent out the surveys multiple times. It was not something we had to do. We wanted to make sure that we had that. We want to make sure that we have that information. Please get it to us if you need bus transportation. Check your parent view. If you see under the student information tab where it says transportation needed and it says yes, that means we're counting you as a bus rider. If it says no, you're getting here by 4 wheels or 2 feet. So please make sure that you have that figured out. The other question I was going to ask is about the name of the adult that will be supporting. Yes, we are going to get that information to you. You're also going to get some specifics from your child's teacher about how it's going to work in their specific classes. If you were provided information that says there was a change to your child's assignment, meaning that the teacher was working remotely, you will be getting specific information from that teacher who remains the teacher of record about how it's going to work in the room with those children. And actually that question came back up again. So yes, you will get that information both from me and then a follow-up from the classroom teacher.
And can students who are being dropped off near the school, can they walk in, check in, and dismiss by themselves?
Yeah, so this is, you guys are phase 1.2, you're our older. Our 4th and 5th graders are welcome to walk to and from school. What we would ask is work with them so they're not mingling on the playground at 8:30. Because we're not managing that. Again, the playground is not open. We're not hanging out and convening. And then obviously at the end of the day, they need to go home. Many of our 4th and 5th graders love to hang out on the playground last year. That is not allowable. They must exit because we're actually using it for dismissal. They can come back. I always say they can come back after they've checked in with you after 4:30 once we've completed our dismissal.
I think Ms. Burton came back in. So we had a question about patrols, Ms. Burton.
Burton?
Surprise.
She's on mute. I'm going to interpret here. It looks like, let me see. Can I ask to unmute?
There we
Try
go.
that.
Hi. I couldn't unmute myself. So patrols, we're not going to be having meetings moving forward. We have been given instruction by our officers that we can't really function the patrols moving forward in a safe way. So as of right now, we had our last meeting in March. They did a great job with their safety presentations in school. They kind of went into the younger grades. But as of right now, we don't have actual jobs for them to do. Again, if that changes, we'll let them know. But as of right now, that's the plan. It's going to be too hard to coordinate who's coming A week, B week, who's staying home. So we thank them very much for their service this year, and we apologize that it's been kind of an interesting year. But that's kind of where we stand with patrols.
Yeah, we met with the Department of Transportation. There may be some limited opportunities for them to be a patrol of some sort on some of the buses. So Obviously, what we need to do is go through a couple of weeks of phase 1.2 to see where we are with bus capacity. But the drivers did say that they may occasionally need assistance with just, reminding kids about the social distancing and the health and safety measures and things like that. So while it may not be what they signed up for, obviously we would love to have them involved with that. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions pop up in the chats. Again, thank you to all of you, especially those of you who came phase 1.1. You gave us that flexibility and you were patient with us. I have to say, I am just absolutely floored at how well it's been going and at the quality of instruction in the classrooms, how quickly we're getting kids in and out of cars and buses and into the building. I'm going to be honest that we were kind of the mindset that we might be arriving still around 9:30. By the second day, before 9 o'clock, we had everybody kind of in the building. But we've extended that car loop to 9 o'clock to give some flexibility there. But our kids are where they need to be. We're bringing in the next group of 4th and 5th graders. They are going to make it a lot easier on us because they know what they're doing already for the most part. And we're going to help those that don't. But we really, really appreciate it. We are very far into the weeds in terms of what we're thinking about. As I mentioned, like our hot topic right now is playground equipment. We're working on it. We want to enhance it. We want to continually make it better for our kids and our staff. And that's what we've been doing. So thank you all for being patient with us. We've never done this before, believe it or not. And hopefully we never have to do it again. So as I said before, this meeting was recorded. We are going to be providing you a link to this, plus the presentation, which has a lot of those hyperlinks in it, including the March lunch menu, but you want to familiarize yourself with March so that when April's released, you know what you're looking for. If you have any questions, obviously you know where to find us. If you're changing your child's preference, please contact Ms. Jacobs. If you check your parent view account, that's your homework tonight in the remaining 5 minutes that we're giving back to you. Please make sure that it's accurate. If it's not, reach out to Ms. Jacobs and she can help you. But again, so far so good, successful, and really, really focused on learning. And again, continuing prioritizing that virtual learning for our students that are still working at home. So we are all one Ashburton, and it's been a phenomenal start to reopening our building. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the staff who came out tonight. We have 2 weeks until we welcome their kids back, but we will see you either April 8th or April 12th in person. Thank you again for everybody, and we appreciate all the support. So have a wonderful evening, and we will see you later.